Welcome to an expansive life conversation with results architect Sande Golgart and Olympic gold medalist Joe Jacobi. Your journey to realignment from fear to freedom starts now. Live an expansive life.
Welcome, everybody. Joe, great to see you.
Bon dia, Sandy. Great to see you as always also.
Yeah, man, this has been so much fun. I'm excited to get into this a little deeper. Today, we're going to not only recap the first two meetings and kind of catch everybody back up with what we have discussed already, which has been an unbelievably fun conversation to continue and to welcome others, to join us. And then we're going to dive into something that I think affects all of us, which is relationships and how we relate. So looking forward to getting into that. But as always, I think it's a great idea for us to get present. So we'll take about 1 minute just to settle in, make sure that we leave behind a lot of the distractions and just become fully present with what's right in front of us. So we'll do this quick series of box breathing, and then we'll go through and kind of catch everybody up with where the conversation has gone to this point before we jump in and get all these wonderful insights from Joe on relationships. So if you can just settle in, try to let your shoulders drop. As you do this, you'll find that that's a great way to settle in. And we'll just start with 3 very quick but very effective box breaths. And what I'll do is lead the count for an inhale through the nose for 4. We'll hold for 4 and then exhale for 8. And we'll just do 3 of these really quick to get us all settled and present. So on my count, let's go in, 2, 3, 4, and hold, 2, 3, 4, and then exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, and exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Last one in, 2, 3, 4, and hold, 2, 3, 4, and exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, we have arrived. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us. I thought what would be a really nice way to start today's call, Jason, if you could put up the slide that kind of shows a good summary of what we've been talking about when we're talking about leading an expansive life. And I think some of the main, concepts that we've covered is so much about leading an expansive life is realizing how expansive your life is and then can continue to be by being present and recognizing it for exactly what it is, and then realizing and checking in with, do you have the space? Have you created the space to allow your life to expand? And this is one of the concepts that is prevalent in a lot of teachings, whether it's Zen, whether it's yoga, whether it's Ayurveda, this idea of space being ever expansive but also contracting, kind of leads us to the beginning of being able to lead an expansive life, which also dovetails into relationships. If you're trying to maintain and spread your energy everywhere, giving it equally to a number of different places, people, circumstances, you become very depleted very quickly, and you're kind of more of a juggler than you are the director or the king kind of leading your expansive life. So, Jason, I don't know if you have the ability to pull up that slide and share that with everybody, but that might be a really quick summary for us to look at. to recognize when maybe you are a little too much in one and not enough in a state of recovery. And Joe, you talked about Olympians and that it's not who's always performing and feeling at their best, but who can go into that rest and recovery and find a way to gather themselves and then be able to perform better when they're called upon to do it, rather than always being in that warrior state of conquering, feeling too much in control, or a need for control, and kind of participating in that known state. But could you elaborate on that, and then we can dive into how we relate and relationships in general?
Yeah, I first of all, Sandy, it's such a beautiful visual that you created there. And I think that these are really helpful to give people just a picture of where they are and how to think about how you think. And I just more thing I wanted to say about the visual is that I think that when we are presented with a visual that sort of allows us to map out where we are, it's not about just trying to like push us up to one area as much as just the real value in these kind of visuals is to notice where you are. And once you notice where you are, then you have the ability to start thinking about what might be affecting that, how your thoughts are, where you are, and we can start to play with that a little bit. But I think that the moment that we sort of feel like a sense of lack for not being where we're supposed to be, I think that becomes harder to work with in general. So I think it's just kind of pinpointing there's no problem to be in that blue area. It's just to notice it, and then once you kind of accept that, you can really start to work with these things. But relative to the rest and recovery, I think one little story, Sandy, that I like to tell. In fact, just before we started the broadcast today, Jason and I were talking a little bit about my running habit. So I'm a 5 day a week runner. I don't measure anything when I run. I usually run on average for about an hour a day when I go running. But the way I think about running is not that I go running for an hour a day. The way I actually think about it is that when I finish running, I'm on a 23-hour break until I go running again. And it's actually really helpful to think that way, because there are things that I know that I can choose to do for myself starting the moment I stop running that will make a tremendous difference 23 hours from that moment when I start to run again. And if I do just a few things in that next 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 90 minutes, in the dedicated to rest, recovery, re-engagement, that's what makes the big difference for me in feeling good when I go out to start running the next day. And it's just like a really funny mindset, because like most people think of like, oh, I'm going to go out and I'm going to do speed today, or I'm going to go out and I'm going to do like endurance today, or I'm going to do some interval training today. And I'm like the opposite of that. I just sort of think about all the things that I can start to do when I finish exercising that will give myself like the best chance of feeling good 23 hours later when I start to exercise again.
Start with this idea that has served me so well in trying to figure out, how do I spend more time at the top of that chart in rest and recovery. And what all of this comes down to for me is really understanding that I've created this understanding for myself, and my job's not to push this on to anybody, but it really serves me really well to know I truly believe that we're here to emancipate ourselves as boundless beings, and find any place that we may be stuck in the conversation going on in our head or how we relate to things that has us feeling anything but boundless and limitless. And so with that, I've adopted one of the things that Peter Crone talks a lot about, which is the idea that life will put people and circumstances in your life to show you where you're not free. And that is such a freeing way of interacting, so that rather than being triggered by what people are doing, what circumstances I might be faced with, and judging those circumstances, I can start to look at those things as, okay, if I feel a little bit uncomfortable here, what is it showing me about myself where I'm stuck, where I'm anything but boundless and limitless? And that has really helped me to get out of judging, what other people do, judging circumstances, feeling any part of being a victim, and being able to take full accountability, which I think is the other big key to living an expansive life. And that is accountability for myself. How do I relate to circumstances? How am I relating to other people? And there's nothing wrong with anybody else. Nothing. They're just unbelievably limitless souls doing the best they can with the level of awareness that they have. And it's my job to kind of align with the people that, I want to be around, that I think are in the trajectory of where I want to take my life. And, kind of reminded me when you were talking about running, that's really your relationship, if I'm hearing you correctly, with running, rest, recovery, and fueling yourself with energy so that the rest of your 23 hours can be more expansive, more exciting, more amazing.
That's the idea. I think we can apply this to so many parts of our life. So I think when I think about an expansive life relative to relationships, I tend to I focus my relationships sort of in three areas. Naturally, there's relationship with others. I know we're going to talk a lot about that. One area that I focus a lot on, and my relationship with this has changed a lot in the last 10 or 15 years, is my relationship to nature. Like, that's its own thing. And then there's relationship to myself. And I think one of the things that you are saying, one of the things I'm taking away from what you're saying, Sandy, and kind of what you've also were sharing about Peter Crone as well. At the end of the day, the relationship with others is a vehicle for self-growth. It's a vehicle for how you work on the relationship with yourself. I love that idea that, the people that show up in our lives, that, it's meant to teach us something. We're meant to learn something there. And there's a lot to that. Like, I mean, nothing we're going to cover in just 60 minutes, but I do think that there is something very special and very unique when we start to look at all these relationships that are showing up in our life. I can't control what Sandy is thinking or feeling or hoping for, or what his perspectives are, but I can be with that. I can be with that. And I think that when I start to do that, how I show up, how I show up in your eyes when we're together, how I see myself looking at you, look back at me. Like, I think that is, I think when you pause and just take some stock of what's happening in those moments, I think in all kinds of relationships in our life, we start to sort of see this differently, and you start to give yourself more space, more generosity, more empathy for who is in front of us, because we start to see ourselves differently through the eyes of others. And I think that's really at the root of that idea of, when people show up in our lives, it's all of it. We didn't expect any of it. We didn't even get to choose our parents or choose our siblings. But again, we see so much in ourselves by like how we see the others looking back at us.
Yeah, I love that. I think, as I've kind of created that belief system that serves me really well, it helps me relax. It helps me realize that life's not happening to me. It's just happening. I'm
Yeah.
just the observer. I can distance myself from thinking that anything in life is actually happening to me. Therefore, I don't need to react to it. I can just observe it. And I think the fuel for creating more and more alignment in your life, which leads to a more relaxed being, and then a more expansive way of living and knowing that you're free, that you're limitless and boundless. The fuel for that is awareness. And I think that's part of what you're sharing is the more aware I can be, the more space I create, the more space I can hold for other people and allow them to just be and realize there's nothing wrong with anybody, including myself. And we're all just doing the best that we can with the level of awareness we have. So if I want to lead a more expansive life, I'm simply just becoming more and more and more aware. And I think this is one of the things that, in the journey that I've been on, that I've found to be fascinating. And there was this kind of crossover moment, where you're doing all of this, work, you're freeing yourself, you're raising your level of awareness, but you can't help but wonder, like, man, when is the amazing life going to show up? Like, when is all the cool stuff going to happen? And I just found myself one day with this amazing feeling, and I started looking around, and I was like, the amazing life isn't out there, it's happening right now. I just need to raise my level of awareness even higher and realize how amazing this all is. And that's when you start being grateful for everything that's happening, all the miracles that are going on, all around you. Are just that. Like, they really are miracles. And you start seeing people who've come into your life to teach you amazing lessons. I believe 100% in soul contracts. And sometimes those soul contracts, we want to think of like a soulmate as this fairy tale romance. It's not always that way. I've come to understand a lot of those soul contracts for who we get to interact with, they are teaching us. They agreed to teach us and show us where we're not free. And they had to show you things that you were holding on to so tight that were triggering you. And they're doing their job to fulfill their soul contract by showing you all the ways that you're stuck. And what I've learned from that is if I take any part of that and I blame them for the way they're acting, I'm not doing my part in learning my lesson for where I'm not free. Hey, I don't know how that lands for you, but that was just this amazing revelation that I felt as I was going through all this.
Last week on this conversation, we talked about expansive, what does it mean? What does expansive leadership mean? And, that conversation really reminds me of like how much I was lacking as a leader so much when I was the chief executive officer of USA Canoe Kayak, that, a job I did for 5 years. And it was just so easy to kind of tear down and judge. And I was deep in that blue space on the visual, during that time in my life. My work life my life looks very different today than it did when I left that job. And I left that job on really good circumstances, much better than like the darkest time of that circumstance. But, Sandy, one of the things I love about our conversations is that you've met my partner in life, Maria, and we talk about what you just said. She talked about that from the beginning of our relationship about, this is a vehicle for us to like learn about ourselves. And I just remember like that was that. I'm like, what? Like, that's it? It's like, that's what you think this is? And then like today, like there's a lot of mutual respect and buy-in to that idea. I mean, it's the premise of our relationship. Like if the relationship was not a vehicle for both of us growing and becoming better people, we wouldn't do it, and I think that is really helpful. But then also you said something, and I just got to tell this little story. So last night we went to a movie, and we went to see Superman of all movies, and because it's played in English in Yeda here, and we go to this movie, and we're sitting there in this movie theater, and I'm like, this is great, date night, and date night. This isn't a date. So here we're having one of these cultural moments. We start talking about like what's a date, what's not a date, right? And I'm like, look, we're seeing Superman. It's like the American definition of date wins. Like, this is we're not going with the Spanish and the American or the Spanish and Catalan definition of date. We're going with the American definition. So we go to this movie, we laugh a lot, we have a good time, and we come out. And Maria's said to me, she said, I think we're on a 6-year date that doesn't stop. So
right.
but that, what you just were saying, it caught me in that moment. Like, this is really good. Like, this is exactly what it's about. Like, there are things that we want to do in our relationship, things we want to do in an experience, but we have to be present in the moment that we're in right now together. Like, if that's what we're doing, if that's what we're agreeing to do, if this is our vehicle for both of us to grow as humans, and see and appreciate those here and now moments. If all we're doing is just planning for a future and living for the future, well, then we're not here anymore, and we're missing out on those beautiful little details that you were just referring to.
Yeah, because the most amazing relationships are just a continuous stream of now, right? Like, so often we build a narrative and a conversation and a story in our head, and unbeknownst to us and unbeknownst to maybe our partners, our friends, our colleagues, employees, we create a story that has roles in them, and we start assigning people to those roles, and they may not even know they're playing those roles inside of our story. We may not have no idea we're playing a role in their story, but the story is fast forwarded to a future state that somebody's holding on to so tight that we then forget to just be present and just kind of allow each other to be exactly who we are and appreciate those things. So when you have a role that somebody's playing in your story, you're constantly evaluating how well they're playing the role, what you need to change about them so that they play the role better. And you're introducing all of this friction, and sometimes even going so far as to potentially suggesting to the other person that there's something wrong with them and they need to change so that your story can play itself out. And that I think is when things can start to get a little bit dangerous, contentious, and you start needing counseling or something along those lines. But what I love, and we talked about this in the expansive leadership conversation last week, is the moment I realized that people don't actually fall in love with the other person. People don't actually fall in love with the circumstance. They don't fall in love with the company that they work for. They fall in love with the version of themselves that they get to be in your presence. And that, I think, is such a beautiful way to understand as a leader, a father, a partner, that if I can show up and allow you to fall in love with the version of yourself that you get to be when you're in my presence, like, that creates a beautiful space. And then from there we can decide, do we like it? Are we, growing closer together? But you can allow people to just be, a human being, not a human, doing, or a human playing a role that you need them to play. And that also just creates like a lot more beauty, in life, in work, in just about everything that we do. And I also want to engage with the audience and let them know too that in the chat, as we're having this conversation and any questions come up, please feel free to log your question in the chat. Joe, Jason, and myself will get to those, and we'll open it up here in another couple of minutes to those questions. So if you have something on your mind, please submit it, in the chat.
So, Sandy, I got a question for you. I wonder, the first time that you kind of came across this idea, that you heard, you felt, you explored this idea about, say, a relationship with another person, being in love with another person, that it's really loving a version of yourself that's experiencing that other person. When you first did that intake of that, the first time you heard it, how did it sit with you? Did it come naturally? Like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense? Or you're like, no, that cannot be right.
Yeah, great question. It hit and it landed like one of those very freeing realizations. I think sometimes we worry so much about what other people think about us. And it clicked for me that the way we think and the way people think they feel about us is the relationship they have to how they feel about the version of themselves when they see you, when they hear you, when they're around you. And so it kind of freed me up to know, I can be just myself and not worry about what expectations other people have on me, what role I'm playing in their story, or what they think about me, because it's a lie, because it has nothing to do with me. It's how they feel about themselves in my presence or listening to me or whatever else. And so that created this really healthy distance between it, to say, I can be okay with if somebody says oh, I can't stand that guy. You're like, okay, good. I don't have to worry about that. I don't have to try and change it. I can look at myself and say, those words don't do anything. They don't have any effect on me, because what that person is saying is, in relating to me, they don't like the version of themselves they have to be, when they're around me. And that's totally cool. They should listen to that and move on and create a stronger relationship with people who are maybe more in alignment with where they want to go or the trajectory they want their life to take. So it just landed as I immediately saw the freedom in it, I guess is what I was saying. And that's what made it so easy for me to adopt and start living my life that way, was the freedom that came along with that. And then as I meet new people, and by the way, new people are former acquaintances you're meeting again for the first time, because we're all changing and evolving. It allowed me to really see who people are today, not the version that I had built in my head of the role they were playing in my story, but really see who are they, what are they going through, be fully present with them. And that has only strengthened the bonds that I have with some of my best friends, acquaintances, people I get to work with. And it's just made my life a lot more expansive, a lot more filled with love for everybody.
That reminds me actually of a story. I worked with a really great guy 25 years ago. This was in 2000. I'd done a short contract with USA Canoe Kayak, and he was the events director there. And we formed a really great relationship working together. And we've stayed in touch on and off. And, he lost his home in the fires in LA several months back. And with that, he went through a major life chapter change as well. And so we connected again, and we had a call, and, we talked about kind of setting the parameters for, what it would be like to take the friendship forward, something that I'd be really interested in doing. And I think he would be interested in doing. But because of the points that we're talking about right now, and sort of the work that I've done with myself around this point, because the way it hit you, it didn't hit me. I actually resisted it in so many ways. And we can come back to that in a moment. But what I
Yeah.
said to this friend was, I'm like, let's make a deal. Like, of course, we have good memories about the way life was 25 years ago, but let's just really be like, let's just start this from where we are today without looking backwards. Like, we'll always have that. We can, that'll always be a frame of reference. But if we're going to do this, if we're going to have conversations and talk openly and support each other and really invest in each other, like, let's do this in a way that just starts from where we are right now, which, by the way, is clearly like a really messy place, but it's a really beautiful place also. And I wouldn't have had the presence of mind to talk like this to an old friend, even not even 6 months ago, let alone 1 year ago, 2 years ago. I wouldn't have had the presence of mind to do this without without reflecting on the kinds of things that you and I have been talking about in this expansive life conversation over the past few weeks, but things that you and I have been working on, for a while now. But I think when you actually start to see that, and it really, how freeing how liberating it can really be just to be able to say to an old friend, hey, we'll always have that, but let's just start from where we are and go forward from here. So I think that, I found that to be really powerful, and it's been amazing. The relationship with this person has been fantastic and very special and meaningful for both of us. Yeah. So I think what we're talking about here is, it's not just nice to process, nice to think about, nice to say, but my gosh, it feels like a million times better to really, to be in that space and to live in that space.
Yeah, I mean, it's made a massive difference and a massive positive shift in my life to even just give people the space and the permission to show up as the new version of themselves. If I have it in my head, oh, this person is that, this person is limited in these ways, and I, judge them, I don't even give them the freedom to show up different. I've sort of typecast them in my
Right.
mind as this one person that always does this and they're always this way. And so I create that reality, and they never show up differently because I never see them differently. And one of the things that I've found to be most profound is giving people the opportunity to show up differently every time and learn about what it is they're going through, how they're evolving in life and changing. I notice all these amazing things that they're going through and the way they're seeing life different. And I notice that with my kids, especially. But you give them the chance to show up different, bigger, more expansive, and it just grows your relationship. It strengthens it, and it gives you even more opportunity to be present and really see what's there. Because, to be honest, like for me, the narrative and the story where you have people playing roles of a life where you're kind of wanting to control it, that's really boring because it's stagnant. When you allow people to show up, you show up different, and you start to notice again like how amazing life actually is, not how you need it to be, moving forward.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the visual again. The chart that you showed at the beginning of the call, and how we have that blue zone.
Yeah. Jason, do you want to bring that back up for anyone who wasn't on at the very beginning while Joe's talking?
Yeah, those lower points, like, I think giving the space for people to be there, I mean, is very freeing. It's like, every time that we are in front of another person, we are in front of their entire chart there, the gold at the top and the blue at the bottom. And it's like, we're not judging it. Where you are is a part of who you are. Like, what I love about the chart is, like, that range of humanity that's there, and the things that influence our feelings and our thoughts and our behavior. Yeah, it's just accepting that, giving ourselves the space for that, and I think that's a true gift in a relationship. But I think that also brings me back to sort of a another question that I have for you, Sandy, is that we are talking a lot about relationships, with others, relating to others. How do you approach? Are there things that you do on your own working on relationship for yourself, like when you're not under the energy, under the tensions of being in front of another person? Are there things that you do on your own to kind of better prepare yourself to work on that relationship with yourself, specifically for being more of who you want to be, authentically want to be as you show up in front of others?
Yeah, well, I do a lot. Probably a bit obsessive here. Because the more the more you sample and taste it and you realize like how great life is when things are this way, the stronger the hunger and the desire for me grows. And like what I'm looking forward to emptying the tank, all my karma on, is allowing the most authentic version of myself to come forward. And like I just keep digging and I go deeper and deeper and keep freeing that person if I predominantly live there, I can get out of balance. So there's four, if you go by Carl Jung, his archetypes, there's a king archetype or a king's energy. And that's the one that needs to set boundaries, create the rules, the discipline, the things that you want to rule your life or be the architect of your life. Then there's the warrior, that is the doer, the one that executes on the discipline, that gets up and goes to the gym, that makes the phone calls, that does the things that need to be done for you to get things done that you ultimately want to get done. And then there's the wizard, which is the person that can sit and think and recognize patterns of people, recognize your own patterns. And then there's the lover, which is an energy you have access to empathize, hold space for people, share love and let love kind of flow through you. And all of these archetypes are energies that when you rely too heavily on one of them, you can recognize when you are out of balance. So, if you're too much tapped into, this lover archetype, you'll recognize like you're not doing enough. You're sitting around and kind of loving on everybody or everything, but you're not getting a lot done. Or you're sitting around as a wizard archetype thinking too much, analyzing, but inspiration isn't coming. And so I pay close attention to all of those things now, and I can recognize really quickly when I'm out of balance, and I have very easy go-to methods to get back in balance, and I find life is just so much easier when I'm in balance. And it's not work-life balance, it's just balance. I think when you introduce the two, you're out of balance from the beginning.
I don't plan any workouts when I run. I just go out and I just get started, and then I kind of decide how I'm feeling. I really listen to my body. I listen to nature and start to make some choices about what's right. In another context, I was I was surfing waves on the surf ski today, and we went for a long paddle, and so there I am again out in nature. And you can, the thing about being in the waves is that it lets you get feedback very quickly about when you are trying to push against something that doesn't want to be pushed upon. And like nowadays, like that used to just hit me in a way like, oh, I can surf the wave better if I actually step back and fall back and make it easier. But now then I can take that same information and say, oh, I wonder where else I might be trying to be pressing something in my life, in my relationships with others, relationship with myself. And this is just kind of how I think evolving the relationship with nature allows you to sort of transfer the conversation, the thoughts you're having within that relationship to relationship with self and relationship with others. And it can start, by the way, you don't have to be a 5-day-a-week runner. You don't have to surf waves on a surf ski. You can literally just go for a walk outside in nature, and you will start to get information. You will start to get feedback really quickly.
Yeah, I love that. I could listen to you talk about nature all day long. Being in the water, being up in the mountains, like it is to me the most expansive way of living. Being confined, inside a house, right, or an office, a desk, like it's necessary from time to time, but man, getting out and expanding your life into nature. I've learned so much through these events that I've done, and the trainings alone have been probably the most profound lessons that I've learned in just getting out and doing and preparing that I absolutely love. And this all reminds me of one particular, excuse me, quote that really changed, I think, the course of my life. I heard it probably 4 or 5 years ago. At least that's when I remember hearing it from Rumi, the poet, that said, when I chase what I think that I want, my life becomes a furnace of stress and anxiety. And when I sit in silence and I realize that what I want also wants me, it's looking for me and it will find me. And something about that just made my heart kind of vibrate, and it made me think, I have to embody and figure out what that is, because it didn't make any sense at the time. It just didn't feel possible. It felt like there's no way that could really work in our world the way that it's set up and constructed, that this might not have any relevance, but my heart was telling me this is everything. And if I could learn kind of what the secrets are to it, and I have to say, now that I have raised my level of awareness, I can see when I'm forcing anything, it really does introduce stress and anxiety. And when I allow people to naturally come into my life, clients to naturally find me, it is so amazing to work with them. When I start chasing them and think that I need more, it does become this furnace, and it moves you below the line if you're not too careful, or if you're not careful. You can move below the line really quickly just by attracting in what you think you want that's not in alignment with what really wants you and what you really want.
I think something we touched upon in the very first week of our calls about what is expansive life, what are the things that get in the way of living it more expansively, is that I think once we sort of see some of the structures and systems of the world around us, that they are designed. We have so many systems of noise and just noise that is designed to make us feel in lack of something. That something is always better where we are not, and that if you just try to get up here or over there. And the result of all this is exactly what you said. I mean, it just makes you feel like you need to force something you need to make something happen, because where you are isn't the right place. And I think that one of the biggest things that we've really been advocating for, if you really dig deep into the last, almost 3 hours now of these conversations over the last 3 weeks, is that there is contentment exactly where we are. And if we miss that, no matter what you do, no matter what you accomplish, no matter what medal at the Olympics that you get, none of that is going to make you happy. It won't. It won't. You've got to see. We have to open ourselves up to what is right now. And I think once we do that, then we can actually start to open up to this idea. I talked about this in week 1, this idea of, being the kind of person that's really content with what is right now, and being the kind of person that is curious and wants new things and new experiences as well. But I cannot have the second without being so grounded in the first.
Well, I mean, this is everything, right? About stress. If you're not comfortable with the way things are, it means you're in a state of disease wishing reality was different than it is.
Right.
And if you don't fix that relationship first and just get totally grounded and realize that any suffering, perceived suffering, is I either have what I don't or I don't have what I want. But reality is exactly the way that it is. So once I found the ability to change my relationship with exactly the way things are, only from that point could I say, very cool, this is what I have. Now, where do I want to go? And then I could start moving with full accountability. It had nothing to do with anybody else, just me. Where do I want my life to go? What trajectory? Where do I want to land? And, I really wanted to relax into unbelievable amounts of success. And that for me, it would be an amazing life to look back on and say, wow, I figured out how to relax into making, allowing amazing things to happen for me instead of me thinking I had to go make all these amazing things, happen. I do want to be respectful for anybody who does have a question. We have about 5 minutes left. I don't see anything popping up on the chat, but I know we have Destiny, Ivor, Morcita. Do any of you, or certainly anybody else, have any questions or just topics that you think would be fun to play around with? And if so, please just fire them into the chat. You're backstage if you're joining from LinkedIn or YouTube or Instagram.
Sandy, I think as we wait and see if for some questions that come in as well, I think it's also maybe a good time to just invite people that are listening that, maybe talk about setting up some of these our future calls that aren't recorded live so that we can actually move some of these topics into, it looks like Ivor has a question coming as well.
All right, Ivor, let her rip. You'll have to put it into the chat, though. Yeah, what Joe's referencing while we wait for Ivor's question, one of the more beautiful things in all of this is purging the stuff, the we'll call it interference, things that you're having a hard time relating to, things that may have happened to you from the past, things that you're holding on to. And Joe and I have talked about the importance and the power of having a call where it's only for select individuals that want a private, safe place just to kick some things around that might be personal, how maybe the way relationships are going or your job is going, or you're struggling with, maybe a boss or someone else that you need to relate to. And it's a place to just kind of get some things off of your chest in a safe environment and honor your feelings, honor the way that your reality is going, so you can recognize, be with, and let those feelings come up. Because so much of what Joe and I have found through life, I think especially as men, but I don't want to just limit it to that, is, you're taught to not allow your feelings to come up, right? You're taught to suppress them and keep moving on with that warrior energy, ignore it and keep moving forward. And over the accumulation of that can be very, very detrimental. Ivor, I'd love to get to your question here. If you have, are you able to type it in? Might be having some typing issues. It's just too bad. We'll have to figure out how to get everybody on stage and get them that link. It's great because we get so many people that join from all these different platforms, but we will figure out a way so that we can pull people up on stage like we did with Hillary last week. I thought that was amazing. And share the stage with all of you amazing people that tune in. what if a life partner is not okay with their place and they aren't okay with the current state? I think, this is a beautiful question. Thanks. One of the things that I think happens when we have a relationship with a partner or a significant other, is that we can sometimes contribute to the idea that they may think there's something wrong with them, or we suggest like, hey, this is amazing. I think you should come along with me on this journey. And the reality is, they may not be in a place where right now, they want to go on that journey. And just to hold space for them, recognize them, and honor their reality, and let them know that wherever they're at, Joe, you referenced this earlier with the chart, wherever they're at is totally fine. Like, there's no right or wrong. There's no pressure to move anywhere. Sometimes it's best just to sit with your reality and allow somebody the space to see for themselves. Is this working for me? Knowing there's nothing wrong with me, but do I like the way things are? Do I like the way I feel with the way things are going? And only from that point, when they decide that they want to change and make a change and move forward, is it then right, for them? And we can always hold the invitation that if there's anything that you ever want to do, anything you want to explore or try out, I'm here for you, supporting you, being your hype squad, that'll be there to let you know it's okay to explore it. But just know, and I think sometimes helping them realize that there aren't no human has any problems. It's just the way they're relating to their circumstance, and knowing that it's safe to work to dissolve the idea or the thinking that they have any problems can sometimes be a much bigger relief than trying to tackle, a perceived problem. Joe, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that.
Yeah, just not much. I love what you said there, Sandy, is that, when I sort of, and by the way, we can have a great conversation that you and myself and Ivor and dig a little deeper into this, and of course, which would be fascinating. But I guess what I'm feel like is coming up for me a lot in my own life, and then as I sort of relate to others, I'm always sort of open to like where I'm feeling the most resistance from, right?
Yeah.
And then to be like, what if that resistance was totally okay? What if there was like nothing wrong with that resistance? Like, it's okay to be not okay kind of thing.
Yeah,
And
right.
yeah, you start there, and as the person that you care about, and you start from there, because the flip side of it is like the more that we sort of make a thing of it, like not being okay, not us, but the person that is like not okay with it not being okay, it's like kind of giving oxygen to a fire. It's like you're just believing more into this idea that, like we were talking about before, something is better over there and something is lesser right here. But I think that I'm just sort of really trying to look at in my own life, and then as I relate to and with people I care about, people on my creative journey, people on my Maria, my journey with Maria. Yeah, I just sort of am always just sort of feeling the resistance, and then the second part of that is like, yeah, what if that's just totally okay, and like we welcome that a little bit more,
Yeah.
like would the world collapse on itself if that happened? And we just, why, I guess my question would be, Sandy, why not experiment with that? We're always trying to like make things better, or like push it to be better. And
Perfect.
maybe like, things can be better if you don't push for them to be better, right? Like, I guess it's a kind of a little bit of, into that Rumi quote that you suggested.
Yeah.
Ivor, I hope that that's helpful. I know that, it's not easy to type these, to put that in writing, but I think continuing more in, actually talking would be amazing with you too, Sandy. That would be so cool.
Well, and not to suggest this to Ivor specifically, but
Right.
the other thing that comes back to this question, just in general, is to play around with what is this showing you about where you might not be free. A lot of times, like, we'll see something, we'll think it's over there, but when we sit with it long enough, we realize maybe there's something I know about myself that I'm not okay with, that I'm not dealing with. And you can go a little deeper, because that's part of the beauty of the reflection, that it's mirroring for you that maybe there's more that I need to go through to be okay, to find a deeper sense of love for this person, the way that they are, honor the way that they are, and just see, what might be there. That just more passionately curious way of going about it. So look, we're out of time. Seems like the time runs so quick with these conversations, but I want to thank everybody, again, for joining us. Joe, I want to thank you again for showing up, taking a break from the waves to join in on this conversation. I look forward to one day being there in Spain with you and participating. But okay, I love it. It can't be me. It's them, right? It's them. All right. Well, thank you so much. I look forward. We'll be in touch, and we'll find a way to pull together that container that you mentioned, Joe, and let people opt into that easily. So thank you for that reminder. All right, everyone, have a fantastic week, and thank you for tuning in. And we may have lost Jason on the connection, so we might have to shut this down ourselves. All right, Joe. Thanks again.
Thank you, Sandy. See you soon.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.